Hi there. Hi there. This is Rebecca, and I am joined today with my fellow travelers because we're all part of Lightworkers Secrets to Success. That's our YouTube channel. We are all lightworkers, and today I'm going to talk to you about my book, which I think you can see on the screen, called Secrets of a Metaphysical Flight Attendant. And I'm just going to touch on some of the highlights of this book and why I wrote it. It's a spiritual memoir, and it came out a few years ago. I wrote it specifically for my students that I had been training for about 5 years. I'd been traveling around the country, teaching people how to get down to the alpha level of consciousness on command. I'm a certified Silva Ultramind trainer, and that's what we do in the workshops. And I would do classes in California, Seattle, Florida, Denver, you name it. And people kept asking me to write a book because they wanted to know why I was so interested in these metaphysical laws and insight. How did I get my insight? So I decided to do that. It took me about 3 years working with my ghostwriter, Bryna Renee, to put the book together. It's not easy to write a book if you want to, do a book that's about 250 pages. But it was a fun experience, and it was everything just kind of fell into place as we were working on it. But the book starts out with the very first big experience that I felt I had in my life that shifted my thought. I was always kind of a strange young person. I mean, I had a very, very real imaginary friend when I was a little girl. Her name was Deowaya, and I have no idea. I've tried to figure out my whole life where she came from, because my mother always told me that she was so real to me. I would talk to her all the time. She had blonde hair and blue eyes. So maybe she was from the Pleiades or some other planet, who knows? But the interesting first big aha moment I had, which is in the first part of my book, the first chapter, is seeing these 3 saucers up close back in 1966. I was sitting in a car looking out over the ocean toward the island of Martha's Vineyard with my date. And I saw these blinking lights coming closer and closer and closer. And as they got really close, I could see that each one that was blinking was a saucer with a dome on top. The blinking was like an orangey reddish color, but it was on and off, on and off. And they got closer and closer. They didn't make any noise. They did the right angle turns, just like everybody talks about. We got out of the car and we looked up, and they were right over our heads. And to me, it was the most amazing experience. I wanted to know, where were they coming from? Because it was unexplainable. We'd never seen anything like this in the news or reported by humans. Nobody had said, oh, we definitely have vehicles like that were flying around. No, we'd never heard that. In fact, we called the Air Force Base down on Cape Cod the next day and called Otis Air Force Base. And they said, we don't know what they were, but we do know that a number of people saw them last night. You weren't the only ones. They were at least open about it. This was in 1966. So I made plans to join the airlines as fast as I could. I was highly motivated to interview pilots and join the airlines to find out what I could about UFOs. And I was sadly disappointed when I first started flying in 1967 to find out that pilots were basically under a gag order. And every time I would go to the cockpit, I would, introduce the topic, and they would just freeze up. And then finally, one of them told me, we just can't talk about them. We'll lose our job. We're told not to report them. We're told not to talk about them. So that was the end of that. But I did meet a lot of pilots over the course of my 35-year career that told me all sorts of interesting stories. You hear a lot when you're in the aviation world, traveling around the world. And the thing that happened to me after the UFO experience was I had an open mind. If you see something, people say it happens to them sometimes when they see a crop circle or, an angelic being or an apparition or paranormal experience. When your mind has been opened, you can believe more than the average person who's just functioning in the three-dimensional world. So as I moved along in my flying career, I learned a lot of amazing things, like how to manifest. Right away, I learned how to write down what you desire, feel like you've already gotten it, and it will show up in your life. And, the younger you are when you learn to manifest, the better, because your mind isn't as clogged up with doubts and worries and, things that happen to you in life that can block it. When you're young, it's very good to learn how to manifest, because you can be more of a natural at it. That's why I personally want to teach young people, because when I first learned that you can actually control the outer world with your inner thoughts, I was just blown away that nobody had ever taught this to me. And I realized many decades later, this is still the case. This type of knowledge is very hidden from the world, very hidden from the average people. So that's another reason I wanted to write this book, to tell some of the secrets that I learned as a metaphysical flight attendant about how the universe works. Well, a few years after learning how to manifest using my creative visualization techniques, I was confronted with a very, very bad situation. For me personally, it was just horrifying. I went and had a routine physical. The doctor called me up. He said, I want you to race to the hospital next week so I can remove one of my favorite organs. He told me I had to have a hysterectomy because I had early cancer. And I was just horrified at the thought of doing anything like that to my body. So I said, well, if I don't do that, what will happen? He said, you'll be dead by the time you're 40. I went completely numb. But having had an open mind, I realized already there's usually always a solution. No matter how dire something sounds, there is always a solution, because we have the ability as humans to solve problems by using our spiritual sense. And I went to a spiritual healer, and she shifted my thought, and bingo, I had an instantaneous healing. Now, that's another reason I wanted to write the book, because I wanted to show people, through the stories that I've told in the book about my own personal experiences, that you never have to be completely stuck. There is always a way out, always. I don't care if you're in prison. If you can get your frequency right and your thought right, and trust that there is a divine intelligence that can do anything, you can free yourself from the worst situations. So I went on to marry 3 men throughout my human life, and they're all in the book. They were all great teachers for me, because I learned a lot from each of them. They were all kind of different in their own ways. The first one was an international model TV commercial actor, and we owned a modeling agency in New York. So I got to really see behind the scenes of the movie industry and the television industry. And to tell you the truth, I haven't gone to too many movies in my life, because they don't really suck me in the way you can get sucked in if you don't really know it's just a movie. But that was a good thing to learn, and after I had this spontaneous healing, I noticed that I could even tell when I would watch the nightly news that it was all just programming. You start to see through things. I would say what I had was I had a spiritual awakening for sure, because nothing was the same after that spontaneous healing. But as a human, I mean, there's always something you have to work on. But to me, the greatest thing you can give yourself is inner peace. And we're living in times where many people do not have inner peace. They're very stressed out. They're very worried. They're very confused. They're being jerked around, manipulated. They don't know how to find that inner peace, the peace that passeth understanding, because they weren't really prepared for what is going on globally on the planet. And they believe everything that the so-called authorities tell them. Well, I'm here to tell you, you can be self-governed and sovereign. And we are fully equipped to take care of ourselves, to manifest abundance, whatever we desire in life. But you have to work at putting yourself in the right frame of mind in order to move along. And if you're just living by default, you'll be subject to the powers that be, and you will not have that freedom that you can only get when you work on yourself. So those are some of the reasons I wrote the book, to try to explain to people, you can do it too. I mean, if a flight attendant can figure out some metaphysical truths and free herself from fear of her body, fear of lack, get divorced 3 times and land on her feet each time. Anybody can do anything. I mean, I was raped even, and that's in the book. We all go through experiences in life, but it's all in how we deal with it. We get to choose. Are we going to let something do us in and finish us off or shut us down? Or are we going to use it as a stepping stone for the next adventure? And I like adventures. So
cool. So what do you think is the biggest takeaway that someone would get if they bought this book?
Well, they will get an insight if they're interested in manifesting using creative visualization and spirituality. And if they're interested in how to heal themselves through spirituality and shifting their thought and, accepting that they're divine, they're not a mere mortal trapped in a body, they will get really good insights into that. And, it also goes into how to free yourself from mental baggage, how to deal with difficult people. There's a little bit of everything in it, but it's all kind of in the background of my crew member life as a flight attendant who started flying in the 60s. So if you're interested in aviation, too, you get kind of a glimpse of what was going on in the airline world and the kind of lifestyles we live. And it's also, like I said, a spiritual memoir. So if you're looking for stories about people who have had awakening, I know after I had mine, I devoured books written by people who had had similar experiences, just to compare notes and see what would happen for them. So that's
awesome.
Part of it.
Awesome. So tell us a little bit about what you're doing now with your course and your video series that you're doing now.
Yeah. Well, I've had a course on Udemy.com called Metaphysics Made Easy for the past few years. And I sell a few every month. I don't really market it that much, but it's called Metaphysics Made Easy. And so I've decided the thing that really is personal for me is the fact that when I was 21 and a man showed me how to use my mind to manifest, and I realized this was like a big aha moment. It was like finding the genie in the bottle. It was like the most amazing thing I'd ever heard, and it worked. I tried it immediately on, a few different things, and bingo, I manifested everything I was thinking about. So I realized this was very, very powerful to learn that the inner world is controlling the outer world, not the other way around. And I had never been taught that in school. They never taught it in college. I didn't learn it in church. I didn't learn it in my community. Everybody was always just reacting to what was going on around them. And the reason I'm putting together a course, I'm trying to focus in on teaching younger people, college level and high school, who have come to my seminars. That age group needs to learn how to think, not what to think. So I'm putting together a course that will help them with that.
Cool. Awesome. Well, that sounds exciting. Pamela, Amanda, anything for you guys?
I think it went to unmute. I've read your book. I think it's amazing, Rebecca. What for someone who's just, because all of us, we've been learning and being part of this whole concept for a while, but for someone who's just like, maybe this is the first time they've seen anything about manifesting or metaphysical, or they just kind of like, we don't believe it's ever a coincidence, right? So everything happens like it's supposed to. What would be the one thing that you would tell them that would maybe encourage them to keep studying or keep looking?
Well, I would encourage anyone right now to get on a metaphysical spiritual path. And there are many different paths that lead us to that oneness that we can feel with the divine source, whatever you want to call it. And I can't even imagine living in these times that we're going through without being a seeker. I mean, how are you going to rely on what the 3D world is talking about to give you any kind of satisfaction or inner peace? Because, I mean, we're living in times where we're definitely seeing a lot of upheaval all over the globe and uncertainty. But if you have that inner guidance, the peace that passeth understanding, and you're connected to your higher self, you don't worry. You know that the outcome will be okay. Everything will work out. And that's something that I think everybody wants. So it's important to really do something in these times that's giving you that sense of peace. Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, everything that you teach it's so true. And, just finding that right kind of spiritual path, I think for you too, whether it's you, I mean, there's so many different people that you can follow, and you can, really get your guidance or your education or the skills that you need to really take forward. I mean, I'm excited to see your course come out, because it's all video based. It's all, it's going to be very, very in depth. I think you and I have had very similar downloads on manifesting and how to go about it, and how to bring this, I don't want to say technology, but this learning or this relearning of this ability that we somehow lost, and now that we're starting to find it again. It's exciting. It's really, really exciting stuff.
Oh, yeah. And I mean, I totally believe we're living in a time of the Great Awakening. And so this is the time to make that decision. Do I want to just be living in the three-dimensional world with my five senses? Or do I want to experience intuition, spiritual sense, my superpowers? And some people are just naturally born that way, but anybody can be taught how to be more intuitive. And it's just really important to develop that in these times that we're living in, so that when you've got to decide, do I believe this person that's spewing out something, or, what's my gut feeling? And you can make better decisions about things that are going to come up that you'll have to decide upon. And it's, when you get that inner guidance, it's called a moral compass, it's called intuition, it's called spiritual sense. You just know, that that's what you're supposed to do, or where you're supposed to go, and I've taught over 3,000 people how to get to the alpha level, and people don't realize it, but you can actually influence your car when you're driving it. you won't have accidents like other people if you learn how to, go within and program what you do want. I have another video coming out tomorrow about how the self-talk that we give ourselves. If you're always saying things like, oh, he's such a pain in the neck, or, he gives me, it burns me up, or I can't, I won't, I don't. You've got to be careful about that, because you manifest more of what your talk is telling you on a daily basis. And we don't even realize there's a voice chattering away inside of us that is basically our frequency. And it's always good to give ourselves a mental house cleaning. And to really practice these metaphysical truths, you need to have a strong desire to want to change. And usually it happens when you're up against the wall and you can't even find a window to jump out of. Seriously, that's what happened to me with the spiritual healing. I was up against the wall when that doctor gave
You'd
me
be really good.
Hmm?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, my phone keeps cutting off. I was just thinking
Oh, you cut
that
out.
because their parents. Oh, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. I was thinking, have you ever considered writing a children's book?
Not really.
Abilities, but they're blocked off because parents don't understand.
No. That's the thing. I mean, that's why the human race, generation after generation, just keeps kind of going around in the same old circles, right? Because the teachers, the parents are just teaching the same program that they learned. And until it's very, very hard to break through the programming. When it happened to me, I almost felt like I had set it up before I came into this dimension, so that I would have to test myself. But not everybody goes through that particular test. Everybody has a different tests that they're going through in this lifetime. But it doesn't matter what the test is. The game of life is to find the solution. And there's always a solution. That's not taught to people. People are taught, oh, it was God's will that happened. Or, oh, you'll never change. You'll never get out of your miserable situation. People are told that all the time. And it's not true.
Yeah, I know. I know when recently when I went to Costa Rica on my retreat, and I did ayahuasca. One of the things while I was experiencing the effects of it that I kept hearing over and over and over again is whatever has a beginning has an end, and all I could see was like just these bar graphs and these different things, and everything had a beginning and it's ending, and then has a beginning and has an end. And the great thing about it is you get to decide when the beginning is and when the end is. And as soon as you have that ability to say, hey, I created this, I started this, I also get to end it whenever I want. And I get to, as soon as I end it, I also get to start something that I want. I think that's where the hardest thing for most people is. And I mean, as we were talking, it just kind of came to me like, geez, I can just start anything and I can also end anything when I want based on my thoughts of it.
It's true. Well, I told you I was divorced 3 times. And that was a starting and an ending each time. And it was when I finally had enough and I shifted my thought that something amazing would happen and we'd just go part company. And many times stay friends, but we just weren't meant to be living together anymore because the frequencies were not in sync. But I've seen that happen. I've moved probably 35 times. I got up to 35 once when I was counting in my life. And being a crew member was part of it, but I've lived from Hawaii to New York and California and all over the place. And it was always the right time. And usually I only had to make one phone call or something to find the next place. It wasn't like a big treasure hunt trying to find a place to live. It would just appear.
Nice.
because my consciousness was ready. Yeah. And that's
Well-
what I'm trying to relay in this book. It's all about the mind.
Mhm. Well, I love it. And I love everything that you have. And I hope all of our listeners, watchers, tuned in to our YouTube channel. I hope that you did like this. If you get something out of it, please leave us a comment. If you've got some clarification, you want to buy Rebecca's book, we'll make sure that we drop the link in there for you if you want to buy it. It's just connected right to her website. You can purchase it that way. It is a good book. I've gone through it a few times, and there's definitely a lot of good nuggets in there. If you did watch this, and make sure you like and subscribe to our channel, we really appreciate it. And also drop us some comments and let us know what you'd love to hear. I mean, I think next week I'm up and I'm going to talk about some med beds. So I'm happy to share that. I have some. We're working on some big projects on med beds, and I'm hoping that I can actually bring them to Costa Rica. So that's my big push right now, is figure out how to get one or two at least into to Costa Rica. So everyone have an awesome night, awesome week. Keep on moving. Let's keep on ascending. Let's get to 5D. Let's change this vibration of this planet, and let's start living heaven on earth like it's supposed to be, not this crappy 3D life that, the cabal has tried to keep us into. So